Happy Monday and welcome to Reading the Bible as Easyish. I am Hogan Brock. He is Harrison Litzel. Despite what you may have thought, we did not disappear over the last month. We took a break, had some time off. Both of us were sick to varying degrees. Our family was sick, and we have made it through that, and we are back. Harrison, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm back in the rhythm of a lot of things and kind of getting stuff started back up for the new year after the holidays. And so yeah, things are going well. How about you? How's everything up there in Toronto?
It's cold as heck, man. Like the other day I went on a walk. I needed to get, so I was doing a project for school. I was like, I need a book from the library. I found the library. I was like, this is great. What's the temperature outside? And trying to learn Celsius, which is also an issue. It was minus like 18 Celsius. I was like, well, that seems cold. It is cold. And it was like minus 24 with the wind chill, which is like minus 11 Fahrenheit or something like that. So it's super duper cold. It snows a lot, but otherwise it's pretty good. Making it work.
Yeah.
We are gonna go a different direction this week with the Bible. Still using the Revised Common Lectionary, still using the NRSV, but we are going to go to the book of Sirach, which is in the Apocrypha. For those of you who are not in traditions that use the Apocrypha, these are books in some Bibles. The Catholic Church uses the Apocrypha. Anglicans do not use the Apocrypha. Am I right about that?
I don't know. I feel like that's more your territory
than
mine.
I'll think about that and Google it while we're talking about this. But anyway, we're going to go to the book of Sirach. It is Sirach 15 through 20. If you do not have a Bible with the Apocrypha in it, you can find it on any number of Bible apps or websites like Bible Gateway, those sorts of things. It's worth checking out if it's something you haven't experienced before. So we will dive right in. Sirach 15 through 20. If you choose, you can keep the commandments, and to act faithfully is a matter of your own choice. He has placed before you fire and water. Stretch out your hand for whichever you choose. Before each person are life and death, and whichever one chooses will be given. For great is the wisdom of the Lord. He is mighty in power and sees everything. His eyes are on those who fear him, and he knows every human action. He has not commanded anyone to be wicked. He has not given anyone permission to sin. So we'll dive in and talk here for a couple of minutes about this text. Harrison, have you ever read this before?
I think so. I think that at some point in my theological education, in either college or grad school, I've done some work in some of these books, and I have encountered, because I know that the book of Sirach is wisdom literature, right? It is kind of in the same tradition as Proverbs, as Ecclesiastes, as Job. And so once we kind of started to move towards this, I remembered that I have read it a little bit. I think, were you in the wisdom literature class with me in college? Okay. I don't remember if that was when I encountered it or not. But my encounters with it have been brief. And I don't recognize this passage or really remember the context of it at all.
Yeah. So the just to throw it in there, the traditions that recognize the Apocrypha, Eastern Orthodox Church, Oriental Orthodox Church, count it as fully canonical, and the Catholic Church includes it, but it is non-canonical, so it's like extra canonical outside the Bible. But as you listen to that, it has the feel. It's written around the same time. It's written from a Hebrew perspective, and there are things here that I connected with. I will say there is strong imagery here. This huge emphasis, what I really picked up on, choice. So in verse 15, act faithfully is a matter of your own choice. And then 16, stretch out your hand for whichever you would choose. We get choose again in 17. There's this really strong emphasis on choice that really stuck out to me. Anything that kind of stuck out to you as you heard the text read?
Yeah, I mean the same thing. It felt like Proverbs to me. It felt like this tradition of learning and discernment, and that we have the ability and the tools to know what is right and wrong, that those kind of aspects of the faith of what God asks of us are available to us. And it's a matter of whether or not we choose to go one way or the other. I think that there are some other traditions woven into the scriptures that take kind of a different way of it, whether that's talking about original sin or whether that's talking about people, the decisions being between what we know and what we don't know. But in the wisdom literature, I think there is kind of this thread of we know it's available to you if you spend the time to look at it and to think about it, and it's a choice of one direction or the other, fully knowing what both of those are. And I think it's in 16. He has placed before you fire and water. We know what fire and water are. They're both there, visible before you. Which are you going to choose?
Yeah. And I'm looking back as well at the verses that come just before this, and it's a very easy contrast. 11 and 12 are, do not say it was the Lord's doing that I fell away. Do not say it was he who led me astray. And so it's this idea, right, that God isn't the one who leads us into bad decisions, who leads us into evil, that leads us into bad things. But rather, this is claiming choice, which is, quite different. I'm curious, you've not interacted with Sirach much. I haven't interacted with it at all. How do you think about the Apocrypha? Does it matter to you in terms of your own kind of faith journey or how you relate to the Bible, or is it just kind of a side project for you?
Yeah, I think that it doesn't hold the same place as the Protestant canon, as the 66 books that we consider canon. But a large part of the importance of scripture for me is the idea that Christians over thousands of years have held this dear and considered it a way to connect with God and to connect with each other. And so the book of Sirach also kind of falls into that. And I think that if that is going to be what I claim to be, why I hold on to scripture, then Sirach probably should play a larger role in my faith than it does. But I think that is a place where my upbringing and my history of the faith kind of runs into a little bit of what I say now I believe. I don't have a history of reading these books, and so I don't approach them regularly now. But maybe I do have more reason to than I did before.
Yeah, I think I'm much the same. It's not something that I've interacted with before. I remember discovering the Apocrypha, hearing about the Apocrypha for the first time in undergrad, and being fascinated and interested. But yeah, it has not been a significant part of my faith journey. But as I'm thinking about it and reading this here, like there's, as you said, it's this is wisdom literature, and I do see wisdom here, and it is in the line of Jewish teaching before Jesus. And so it kind of bridges that gap of a time frame where we don't have a lot of literature. And so I think just from an academic perspective, right, like it's interesting to kind of encounter this book as well as some of the other apocryphal literature to fill in the gaps of what we're missing between the end of the kind of prophetic books that we get at the end of the Old Testament before we move into the Gospels. So let's wrap up here. If you were going to spend some more time with this text this week, Harrison, what would you think about? What would you look into? What would you be interested in?
I think the thing that I would be most interested in with Sirach specifically would be kind of the background of it, of when was this book written? What do we know about its creation and its gathering together? There are these practices with wisdom literature of just kind of picking this verse or picking this passage and reading it, kind of, the basis of this whole podcast that we do each week. But I think that it's helpful to do that within a little bit more knowledge and context of the movements of what's going on. And I feel like when I entered this book, I just had no idea. I had no memory of what was here, of what the context is. And that made me feel a lot more unstable than I think I usually do when we do this zero preparation conversations.
Yeah, our zero prep is usually kind of, I don't know, backed up by years of experience, right? Like doing this for a long time, or I don't know, long time's relative. But yeah, I have no context for what's going on here at all. Wisdom literature for me, what's always so important when we look at Proverbs, when we look at, I don't know, some of the prophetic literature that has some wisdom literature kind of elements to it, is the background, like you said, knowing who is this writing for? What time period is this writing about? I have no idea here. I feel like I'm completely blind. And yeah, so I think that's something I'm interested in. I love the history of canonization. I think that's a pretty interesting debate that happens within the history of Christianity. And so that's something as well that I'm gonna read about this week. Looking forward to that. So that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for joining us again as we kick off season 2 of Reading the Bible is Easyish. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, keep trying to read the Bible.